working 7 days a week in 24 hours.
Zachary White, welcome to the show. Welcome to Become Your Own Superhero.
Laban, I cannot get enough airtime with you, brother. I love the energy, so let's do this.
Welcome to the Oasis of Courage. What does an oasis of courage look like these days, Zach?
Oh, wow. In my journey, Oasis of Courage, which for those who don't know, that is the name of my business, my coaching company. But it is a place people go to get recharged and rejuvenated from the beat down of life sometimes. We're out in the arena getting our butts kicked, that sweat and blood from the famous quote from Teddy Roosevelt. And to me, the Oasis of Courage, it's that third place. It's the place you escape to really establish sense of peace, sense of calm, the energy to go back in and get it done. You don't want to hang in the oasis. It's not a place you stay. You think about the picture of a desert, an oasis there. If you stay there, you're still in the desert, right? Like, the point is not to come and hang there forever, but it's just like, let's get what we need to get back in the game. And I love it. It's so fun to be a part of that journey with my clients and people like you. And I think we all need an oasis, Laban. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I love that. And I have, an Owaco for short, which you'll no doubt hear Zach use today. But it's funny how your voice broke at rejuvenate, the word rejuvenate. It's like, hey, is the universe sending you a signal? Like, are you working your tail off? Are you working too hard, Zach, at the moment? Is that what's going on?
Oh, wow. I would say I'm working at a level that aligns with my intention for this season, but it is not aligned with my vision. And so in that regard, it's fair to say I'm working too hard, because what I want for my life is to work less than I am right now. And I'll receive that signal from the universe. So if God's given me a nudge, it's time to hit the brakes a little bit today. That sounds like a great plan.
Well, we better explain to everyone what you do, because I think it's really important. And 3 minutes in, people are going to go, well, what's this podcast all about? So what is the 60-second synopsis of who Zach White is?
What I do is support engineering leaders, people who want to create impact and make a difference in their career or in their business if they're entrepreneurial minded, and have that technical, science, analytical, logical kind of brain. Help them to reach the next level, break through in the areas that hold them back, both in their area of career success, but also with alignment and integrity to their whole person. Avoiding burnout, avoiding the challenges and the trade-offs, these compromise calculations that we're constantly making. Get out of our heads, get into action, get out of the comfort zone, and go make a difference in the world at the next level. And so we provide coaching and training and tools for engineering leaders to get through those barriers and roadblocks, and in many, many cases, a complete transformation in their life along that journey.
Yeah, a very specific niched area that you're in, and you've got an amazing podcast as well, The Happy Engineer, if I'm not mistaken, which I was a privilege to be a guest on. You've interviewed a bucket of people, predominantly from that engineering space, but also some other people that can provide some amazing aspects. So if you haven't checked out Zach's podcast, it's available everywhere, and he's crushing it. It's in the top 0.5% of downloads globally. So that tells you he's doing something very, very right. Zach, where did all this begin for you?
The Oasis of Courage was born sitting across from a divorce attorney in a big conference room with the classic, mahogany bookshelves, big wood table. And, for her, just another day at the office. For me, it was my adult rock bottom, most embarrassing, depressing, shameful moment of my life. And I didn't know sitting there that Owaco was being planted, but that's the moment where everything that I'm doing now was born in me. And it was the journey over the 5, 6, 7 years after that moment where, that seed grew into a plant big enough that I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? I need to go harvest on this. But that was the moment where it began, truly in a rock bottom place for me.
You don't look old enough to have been divorced.
well,
Unless you're Britney Spears.
I mean, hopefully when I'm 60, that will be a really good thing. But yeah, today I still can be mistaken for a high school student in the wrong context. But no, I got married right out of college to my college ballroom dance partner and sweetheart. And so I was 22 at the time, and divorced just over 5 years later. And now have been since recovered, healed, remarried, and my beautiful, amazing wife, Johanna, who is the most incredible woman on the planet in so many ways. We've actually just passed our 5-year anniversary as well. So life has changed a lot in that time, but I'm older than I look, Laban.
Well, you look great, and I haven't had a good chance to meet Johanna in person yet, but she is beautiful inside and out. She's a super intelligent woman, and it's funny, a couple of times I think you've said you're very lucky, and I would always counter that by saying you create your own luck. What you're putting together, from my observation and the growth that I've witnessed in the short time that we've known each other, which is, I don't know, like 6-12 months, maybe. It's not, maybe not even that. It's definitely 6, but
probably in that range.
Yeah,
which is amazing. It does feel like I know you well, but that's the nature of how you connect, and I love that so much.
Well, you've invested in yourself, and you've joined the world's best mastermind group that was created this year as well, and you've attended 2 of the sessions so far.
Yes.
And just while we're on the subject, really quickly, what's been your experience being a part of a mastermind like this for the first time?
So for anyone who doesn't know, when we say mastermind, what that is, I hope you do your homework and reach out. And if you haven't experienced it, I'll tell you, there's nothing quite like actually being in a space with people whose intentions are so service-oriented, generous, giving, but also with an expectation that something magical is going to happen every time we're together. And so, the world's best mastermind, which kudos Laban and Evans for pulling that together. It's just amazing to be a part of it. My first session, and Laban, I mean, you remember the moment. I'm still if you took a photo of my face in this moment, I'm sure it would be something my wife would laugh and frame for all eternity. But the amazing Les Brown, who's a part of our group, took my simple question around where I felt stuck in business and understood. He was able to see through my surfacey question that I thought I'd really planned and prepared well for, and get to the heart of the matter of who I am, the identity of Zach and the Oasis of Courage, and what it looks like to bring that into the world in a way that moves people and inspires people. And for me, just to witness his expertise in service of my vision, and then to be encouraged and uplifted, and people offering help and support at all these places where I need it. I literally cried from that time with a sense of joy, those joyful tears. It's not a sad cry, it's the happy cry. And as an engineer at heart, I don't do a lot of happy cries, Laban. That's a pretty rare thing in my life. But when you get touched in those soft inner places of your heart, there's nothing like it. And masterminding is a way to access that, but it's about relationship, just opening up, being willing to trust someone fully and give them an opportunity to help you, which is something we don't always do.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad I asked this, because we've spoken post masterclass and sort of just been humbled by the experience. But now that there's been a bit of time for you to absorb what's going on, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I'm trying to, at the moment, work on articulating how to explain to people that don't have any experience in this what actually goes on. And because there's not anything tangible that you can commit to, because it's kind of like driven by how willing you are to receive, right? It's based on service, so what you can offer the group, but then how you can receive. In my own existence recently, I've been embracing accepting help more and more and more. And as a direct result, I'm able to give more and more and more. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I like the way Napoleon Hill talks about masterminds, and I don't know if he gets original credit for the word or not, but some of his writing is where I first came across the idea. And it's a bit weird to think about, but if you could imagine, I bring my mind to the conversation, to the room, so to speak, the container we've created for this group. And you bring your mind, and Les brings his mind, and Jim brings his mind, and each of us individually have a lot to offer. But in that moment, we're only able to access our conscious thoughts. But when we're together and we each bring our consciousness to this space, the idea of the mastermind is that a separate mind is created. And in essence, it extracts from each of us something that we may not have had access to before. And you could say maybe that's the subconscious mind connecting the dots of all these other people's consciousness, or maybe it's God bringing that into the space, whatever. I don't know. I don't need to know. What I know is when you come with that attitude you described, that willingness to receive, a deep hope and expectation, hope as a confident expectation, not hope like I don't think it's going to happen, but maybe I hope to win the lottery. Like, no, not that. Hope as in I expect something powerful to happen. And then it just does. To your point, if somebody watched the recording, especially if they watched the recording without sound, they'd be like, you're just sitting there. Like, nothing's actually happening. But the magic seems to happen every time when the whole group is in that place. And I don't know about you, Laban, but I have been in masterminds before where the group doesn't work. There's someone or multiple people who just aren't bringing that spirit to it, and it really kind of breaks the whole dynamic. It's like that mastermind, that independent mind is never created. We're just all being ourselves, which I can go do by myself anytime. And so I do think it's special when you find that group where you can consistently get to a place that transcends what we would have been able to accomplish individually, or even if our the sum of our individual parts, it's multiplicative of that. It's bigger than that.
There's something truly magical and I've never been really a part of any official mastermind prior to this. I've been part of, I haven't, but nothing formalized like this. But I have since then seen some examples of plenty of people that go into these with this selfish mindset. And in some circumstances, that selfishness is required in life. But in this context, it kills the energy. And I think that we've been able to create something really special here. And I didn't want to make this focus, but given you're so heavily involved and have been dramatically impacted by this, I think it's really important, because I want to talk about your coaching and the coaching that you do that flows on after this as the result of all the other knowledge that's being continually acquired in these kind of environments. Mm-hmm. Because what people don't realize, when you're being coached by someone like Zach, you get to download everything that he's continually learning as well while you're in that coaching agreement. And maybe this is a good place to transition. Do you have an example for us of a coaching client? You have to say any names of a breakthrough that you've had recently that you'd like to share?
Totally. I mean, there's story after story I could pull from. And one example recently, I think it's incredibly powerful. A female engineering leader who was at the senior manager level and had been there at that level for something like 8 or 9 years. And for 6 of those years, she had been desiring and taking action toward finding a director level role, wanted to advance in her career, had the ambition, had the drive, the desire, and was not lazy about it. Routine conversations with her leaders about her gaps and where she needed to focus on development, pursuing opportunities both internally and externally. And 6 years of effort with no result. The same frustrating response. Every time she would go ask, it was, "You're doing a great job. Keep doing good work. Here's a couple of areas you can continue to improve. And, your name's on the list," so to speak. Like, very frustrating for any leader. It's like, well, okay, if I'm doing such a great job, why is nothing happening? And can you give me something tangible and something meaningful to actually go do? And a lot of times, leaders in companies are not really able to articulate that. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of not great leaders out there. And so here she is stuck in that situation. Well, she enrolled in my coaching program mostly out of a sense of desperation. Like, what else can I do? What am I missing? There has to be something missing here. And we started working together. And, Laban, you know this as well as anybody. The blind spot in terms of limiting beliefs for her, which I know that's almost a cliche phrase anymore. 5 years ago, that was like, what are we talking about? Now everybody's talking about limiting beliefs, but it is real and it is important. And we got into the nuts and bolts of the doing part of her person versus the being part of her. Being precedes doing. And in the being, in her identity, there were some places where deep down she actually didn't believe that she was ready for that director position. And all of those actions that had happened for 6 years were done from a mindset of, I'm not ready. But that was in the background. It was not conscious. Well, Laban, that energy of I'm not ready comes through in every one of those actions. When she's talking with her leader about a promotion, that leader is sensing that she's not actually ready. So, when he can't articulate what needs to change, part of that is because he doesn't understand why he feels that she's not ready. He just knows she's not ready. There's so much that happens in communication that way. So we made a few really powerful shifts for her, some new distinctions, creating new references and a level of understanding about why you're absolutely ready, and started doing the mindset work and going through this daily process of rewiring her nervous system through simple actions, affirmations and journaling and action in alignment with a new identity. And she received a director promotion at a new company and a huge raise and a big team that she was thrilled about in just 6 weeks. 6 years of effort, banging her head against the wall, and in 6 weeks landed a director position. And, it's like, wow, how does that happen? Well, these kinds of quantum leap moments or breakthroughs in our life, it's like, what changed? And for her as a person and her skills, her knowledge, nothing changed in her engineering acumen. I didn't give her any tips on how to be a better engineer. She was already beyond the level she needed to be in her, technical skills. It was all in the background in this mindset that was holding her back. And so that's one example. And it's not always, that, but just how a little thing in a coaching engagement can create a breakthrough. And then, now we can talk about new strategies and new actions and how to lead at the next level and get real results from it. Whereas before I could have given her those strategies that directors use before, but she wouldn't have been able to act it out in a way that would get results. This is so frustrating for engineering leaders, and I think anybody can relate to this. We want to believe, Laban, that everything is cause and effect. And there's some important truth to that statement, and I don't want to poo-poo on y equals f of x. I mean, I'm an engineer, man. I love cause and effect. Don't get me wrong. But the same action, literally the same action, done from two different mindsets will yield two different results. Mindset is at cause, and we don't see that. We don't want to believe that. And anybody who doesn't agree with me, go talk to your loved one, your partner, your spouse, and use the same words from two different mindsets, right? One of the mindsets could be, you're such an idiot. How did you do this? And say something like, what was that for? What was that for? Another mindset could be love and compassion and tender care for that person. We say, what was that for? exact same words coming from two different mindsets, and the way it gets delivered is then totally different. It's the same in any of these areas of life. So that's one example, Laban. I don't know. We could go all day on stories.
Mate, it's so great, and because I definitely know at least one engineer, my mate Sam Skinner, that is a PhD in water. I should know exactly what he did as PhD, given we've been friends for such a long time, and he's my ultra distance running buddy. So we've spent tens and maybe hundreds of hours running together.
Oh, wow.
I know he's a very smart dude, and hopefully he gets to this episode. Big shout out to Sammy Skinner, one of my biggest fans on the show. And it's funny, the way that my brain operates, I think it might be the complete opposite. But in saying that, in my own transformation journey, I used the language reverse engineered the trauma that I'd experienced to help me figure out a solution, and I did it. So I think there's all of us have this engineering part of our brain that we use. Some of us just do it for a job, right? And further to that example with your lady coaching client, who do you think is the best client for you? Like, if you could get an easel and paint all of the challenges that a particular person could be going through, that they could then turn up at your door and say, help me, Dr. Zach.
The place that I've seen the deepest struggle in career building for engineering leaders tends to be this middle management band. And here's what I've noticed, and I think most, this isn't just true in engineering, but I see it there especially. You go into engineering because you have a passion for technology and mathematics and science, and you're good at it, you have an acumen there, and you pursue it, and you start your career doing the work. And it's fun. You're out there running experiments, developing new technologies, writing code, running tests, whatever that is. And then because you're good at it, you get promoted. You go from a junior engineer to a project engineer, a senior engineer, and then one day you've had enough experience and you get tapped on the shoulder to become a manager. And this is for a lot of engineers, it's something they dream about, they want to do, they want to have a bigger impact, they want to lead the team and take that on, and that's awesome. But they get there, and for one, most of the time, you're not actually given the training and the preparation and all the skills that you need to lead people, because being a great engineer and a great manager are completely different skill sets. But for two, you get in this place where you're now no longer in the trenches doing that work that really drove your passion and engagement. You're also not the one in charge. You're not the director or the VP and making these big strategic decisions. So you don't have the autonomy of a top level leader in that regard. And you often feel quite trapped, this player coach, band of the organization. So, managers and senior managers who get in that slot for, 3 years, then 5 years, then it's 10 years, and they reach the point of no return where it's like, I'm either going to be a manager for the rest of my career, which I'm not even loving it. It's not bad. It's not good. Or not great, right? It's the classic Jim Collins, where good is the enemy of great. Mm-hmm. I call it the golden cage, Laban. They're in a golden cage. They make great money, highly paid professionals. They have the house, the mortgage, the wife, the kids, the life in the suburbs, and it's fine. But they're not really thriving. They're not loving their life, but they're terrified to make any changes because they've got all these, anchors holding them into that situation, and they don't know how to move up, and they don't want to move back down because lifestyle and income and these things. So they just get trapped right there. So that person, we've just seen time and time again that the work we do in this coaching, process, the inner discovery combined with, mindset breakthrough, and then actions and strategies and tactics to open whatever door you want to open. That's what I'd emphasize. It's not about just promotion. If you don't want to be a director, fine. But let's get into integrity around that. Stop pretending that you want to be a director and go find a place in your life that you can absolutely light up again. And that's the person I want to work with, is the person who's sick and tired of being stuck in a average life. And, you don't have to be a manager to work with us. We've got junior engineers who are 3 years out of college and already feel like, oh no, is this the right path for my life? And we've got people 5 years from retirement who are saying, I'm not done. There's more in the tank, and I'm tired of people telling me that I need to just coast to the finish line, and I'm not getting any opportunities. How can I maximize these next 5 years? So it goes across the whole spectrum. But the person I've seen, if there was a bullseye, man, it's that manager, senior manager who just doesn't know how to get out of that golden cage.
Well, it's you operate from such a high place of integrity, because I think it's not just affecting engineers, what you're sharing. In my experience, like I worked in recruitment forever before I got into doing what I'm doing now. And people that they are on the receiving end of like, you should be grateful that you've got this job, and absolutely gratitude comes into maintaining mental health and perspective on life. But no one should suffer. And what it is, it's because I believe that they are living out of alignment with what they are on the planet to do. And that's okay. But just do something about it. And if every single person on the planet, and this is very utopian for now, but if every single person on the planet was living their purpose, the world would be unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine everyone doing what they love to do. And people are so negative. And, as this is being recorded in June 2022, 3 days after the share market's gone to a bloodbath, the crypto market's gone, and there's so much opportunity to revel in the negativity. And I didn't want to make it about that, but it's an interesting timestamp, because you might be forced into figuring out your purpose, which is what happened to me at the start of 2020, right? We discussed this when you interviewed me on your show. And that ended up being a huge blessing in disguise. So maybe what I'm trying to articulate here is, there might be an opportunity in the coming days, weeks, or months, or years where you are forced in your hand to transition. So start having to think about what it is that you would love to do if money wasn't an issue. And that's the main one, really, isn't it?
For most people, no doubt. The fear around financial security is a gripping force, especially for engineers. I think personality-wise, it's a super big challenge. Laban, something you said that I want to put an exclamation point on, because it's so important. That idea of suffering. One of the things that is really hard for my clients and for myself, I lived this, right? This is my story. I felt like I was not allowed to have problems. So when I was going through that rock bottom moment and I was suffering, physical pain, anguish, embarrassment, despair, depression. I was suffering in that time, but I didn't allow myself to suffer in the sense that I make good money. I'm still employed. I've got this job. I'm an engineer. I'm a white male in America. I don't have any problems. I'm not allowed to complain. I have nothing to complain about, because to your point, I should be grateful. I should be happy and grateful to have this life. There's billions of people around the world who would kill to trade me for this situation. Therefore, by comparison, I'm not allowed to suffer in this situation. I just need to get through it and move on. That to me is a tragedy, because it's not about comparison. It's not about the billion other people who would trade me. I suffered. And I have clients who are suffering in the same ways or similar ways, who on the outside, maybe we would all say, you're fine, suck it up, buttercup. But on the inside, they're suffering in a way that impacts them the same way that suffering in a different, quote unquote, more extreme sense impacts others. And I just encourage everyone, stop comparing suffering. Let's take Laban's insight. Let's just go pursue purpose and passion and love and service and all these things that really create a life that you wake up and cannot wait to get started with the day. instead of looking backwards and comparing to these other things.
It's spot on, because what people may not realize or put together at this point, all the most successful people that I've ever met in my life, and I'm talking about financially, fulfillment, relationships, and their health, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, are all living their purpose. They all are the most abundantly wealthy people that I've met as well. And so as a result, they hire or indirectly create employment. They have a huge more amount of disposable income that goes into buying, and supporting the local and the international economy. Like that's the whole point of this. Like, a rising tide sort of lifts all boats, and that's why I listened to something recently the other day. I don't know who said it, but the USA was the first example of a capitalistic society ever, and everything prior to that had been in a socialist or a communistic scenario, and it proved itself to be the right way to go about things, right? And you could look at the news now and disagree, but if you do, you're an idiot. Stop watching the news. And I don't take back that statement. Because it worked, and it worked because of freedom, and freedom to choose, freedom to live your purpose, freedom to follow your desire and your God-given innate gift. And I think maybe that's the whole point of this thing.
Free to be, free to act. That's such an important prerequisite to then having the thing that you vision and dream to have in your life. And so I agree, if we don't have the fundamental freedom to be and to transform that being and to become who we want and need to become, aligned with our purpose, and then the freedom to act in integrity to that purpose, then we don't have the opportunity to have these tremendous, abundant results that you just described. And so I feel blessed to be in America and have that chance. And nobody is stopping me from becoming who I need to become to live my purpose, except for myself, which is the work. It's actually the hardest work. The actions are relatively simple once you get out of the way of your own limitations and beliefs and the being side of that. But yeah, Laban, well said, man. We're going to church, buddy. This is good stuff.
Well, I want to take it down another direction for a little bit, and then I want to finish up with what advice that you'll have to maintain positivity based on what I'm going to ask you about now.
Okay.
What do you think is happening in the world as we speak? Honest answer.
At a macro level, I see, two worlds colliding that creates a negative downward spiral. The predictable cycles of financial markets and economies and debt cycles, and go watch the Ray Dalio video on how markets work, and this is science and predictable. You don't have credit expansion without credit contraction. So all of those things are happening, and it's amplified by war and things happening around the world in terms of politics. So you have that dynamic that we can see, measure, and it's scientific in a way. And then we have a spiritual or mental thought element where I see a shift in our focus. The shift that is from things are good and growing and positive, and I have a hope and a future for my life, and I can better my situation, and that whole spiritual alignment towards what is good. And people are, to your comment earlier, they're watching the news, they're watching social media, they're looking at these effects that are scientific in nature, and their focus is trending heavily towards all things negative. And where the focus goes, energy flows. And energy is the creation force of your life. And when your energy is poured into negative thinking, you're creating negative outcomes. And so you have some predictable scientific things happening that, quite frankly, they're painful, but there's no need to be extraordinarily afraid of them, because it's happened before and humanity has survived and will survive again. But then we add this focus shift Sometimes, Laban, I can hardly stand to go out and talk to some people who I consider, friends, because there's so much negativity in their focus. It's like, I can't be around that. You're bringing me to a place I don't want to go. And so I think that's what I see happening, and it's happening macro, but it's also micro. Like, just look at your neighbors, look at yourself, and the things that I see happening in so many domains. Health outcomes, financial outcomes, losing jobs, creating all these things. And anyway, I'm pretty passionate about this. It's sad to watch, because I feel like, just because we're going through a credit contraction, a market cycle, doesn't mean that your whole life has to be terrible in this process. But I get it that it's hard. I don't want to dismiss or belittle the realities that people face during a time like this that will be pressured and trial by fire in many cases. And to your point, suffering will happen through this season.
Well, maybe you didn't realize it, but you just shared about 3 or 4 tips that people can utilize to help stay away from it. What I'm grappling with at the moment, Zach, is it was me being informed back in the day that allowed me to sort my health issues out, right? And it was an incurable autoimmune disease. And that made me very awake for when things like COVID took place. And it's looking like, it's beyond looking like, there is a real deliberate agenda with a lot of this stuff. And some of it appears to be so nefarious in its nature that it's impossible to take your eyes off at times. And in terms of things that are outside of my control, I don't want this to be outside of my control. But then again, what can I do if I'm spending all my time worrying about that when I need to focus on creating a life where I can be free, get off the matrix or whatever? What advice do you have for me and for anyone that's experiencing that?
I love how hard this conversation is, because I'm right there with you. And I know there's not a simple answer, but here's what I believe. We start in the spirit of control by using the most important resource that I have, which is directing my thoughts. So I have time and energy, and I translate those into controlling my thinking, decisions, and actions. And thinking precedes the actual decision and action. So I always begin there, like, what am I thinking? What am I focused on? Am I doing the work to align that with the things that matter to me and what I believe, or if my beliefs need to be challenged and shifted, am I going and seeking the support, the help, the references, the information? To your point earlier, a single distinction, a single piece of information can change your life, and to be open to that and asking for it. And if you don't know what piece of information to ask for, then just start by saying, like, well, what is that? What I need is the piece of information about what information I need. Just to start getting curious. But then to your point around, all right, how do I avoid these things that are happening in the environment around me, that if I want to operate in the systems of this world, I'm not willing to go off grid and start farming my own food and raising my own cattle and, running on a generator. That's not a life I'm willing to even consider. So I'm plugged in. How do I deal with that? For me, I seek to evangelize. It's funny, we used that word earlier, so it's primed in my mind before we hit record. I seek to evangelize with the people I am around the beliefs that I see consistently yield fruitful outcomes, to do everything to change the atmosphere from me out. So I don't reach beyond what I can influence and burn calories, hoping that I can change that atmosphere. Like, right around my life is an atmosphere that I can change. I have the authority and the energy and the power to change that through my actions and decisions. And so that's where I focus is, if each one of us would change the atmosphere around us, eventually Laban's atmosphere will overlap with Zach's, and we're going to create something bigger that's moving in a direction we're excited about, that's positive in that way. And then the next person. And I just feel like we're too afraid to do that for whatever reason. It could be the nefarious agendas we talked about. It could be a lot of things. Maybe if you're, from a spiritual perspective, you could say it's the forces of evil in the world. Like, whatever it is, we're afraid, which is why you need the world's best courage coach and people like Laban to support you in this journey. But atmosphere shifting from me outward, what do I believe causes that to happen? Evangelizing those beliefs and just pouring my fuel into it, man. I just, it's worth it. It's worth it. Just, that's the purpose piece. And I don't know, that's a bit fuzzy. Maybe it doesn't help people with exactly what to do, but I think that's part of the wrestling. That's why it's a hard conversation. You've got to get into yourself and decide what that is for you. What I'm doing may not match what someone else needs to do, because my purpose may not match your purpose, and my vision doesn't match your vision. But don't settle for letting the atmosphere around change you. I'm going to change the atmosphere. I don't care what anybody else says. That's my approach.
Yeah. And mate, I think you did a heck of a job. If you knew the answer, you'd be a multi-trillionaire immediately overnight.
Yeah.
Because I think it's, and maybe people would say this back before the Depression or before World War II, before the genocide of the Jews, and the world never seen anything like this. The world hasn't seen anything like this. And one example is I saw there's a product or an AI program called Aladdin that BlackRock, the huge, big investment firm that I hadn't heard of a year ago, but now control I think a third of the investment portfolio on the whole planet.
Yeah, it's
trillions. It's trillions, right? $30 trillion. And it's like the GDP of Europe is the amount. It's something along that. It's huge. And this program, Aladdin, was created 20 something years ago, and it's developed intelligence. And a lot of the share traders, they sold their data at one point, and maybe still do. So you could invest based off their algorithmic choices, and it was hugely successful. And you look at what they buy, it's so big. It's like basically the fourth arm of the government now, they think. And when you look at, my passion is around knowing the truth so that I can make an informed decision. The stuff that they invest in is this fake meat industry, which this is the first time you've ever hearing about it. I can tell you without any shadow of any doubt, if you put that food in your mouth, you deserve everything that's coming to you. All right. I'm just going to say that. And I don't care about upsetting people. Oh, it's the planet or whatever. Nah, it's all wrong, and you are being lied to without any shadow of any doubt. And it's how can you compete with this bombardment of the opposite and create an impact? And I think what's becoming clear, Zach, is that people need to be in enough pain to want to do something about it, because the things that we're being told to do, will result in tremendous pain, death in many cases, and maybe that'll be the catalyst. So maybe this is just what we need to experience for any real change. I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but I don't know. Is that making any sense?
It does. No, I mean, you're absolutely right. As long as I can still, watch Netflix after work, have my couple of beers, go out to the restaurant, enjoy a burger and fries, and life, sort of feels the way it's always felt. and all that stuff that's happening is just on the news, and maybe I feel the pain of my 401k plummeting, but I'm not going to retire for another 20 years and it'll bounce back. And yeah, why would I change anything? Do I even care about this? And okay, yeah, my friends are getting a little salty on Facebook or whatever, but yeah, I mean, Laban, I think you're right. If we don't feel an acute pain, we're not going to act. And it's maybe the real challenge for anyone out there who wants to make a difference is to like do what it takes to put yourself into a position where action is non-negotiable. And for me, one of the ways I do that is I change the time horizon of my thinking. I got to get out of just like today it's great, everything's fine, this is great, but what if I don't make any shifts in my life for the next year or 3 years or 5 years? What if 10 years from now I continue to just live this way? Where does that take me? Is that going to be the life I want to live? And if these macro things happen the way that they might happen, and I don't do anything about it in terms of preparing myself, my family, and my community, and am I going to be okay 10 years from now looking back saying, wow, I sat on my freaking butt watching Netflix every night when I could have been doing something? And for me, that makes it more painful. It's like, no, I do not want to live with a regret 10 years from now that when I had a chance to make a difference, I didn't. And, the lift to make a difference at that point is way bigger. And it doesn't have to be, okay, maybe you're not passionate about the politics and the macroeconomics or whatever, or money. Okay, fine. Well, same for health. You've gained 2 pounds this year so far. No big deal, right? Well, what if you gain 2 pounds every 6 months for the next 10 years? What does that life look like? Do you really want to get there? Maybe it's time to cut some calories and go on an ultra marathon with Laban. But anyway, I think you're right. You gotta pull the pain into the present, and you can do that. That's, the power of the human mind was something uniquely human to be able to do that and to inspire yourself into a new trajectory.
Zach, where do people find you, brother?
The best place, if you want to get some Zach White in your life, is to jump over to the Happy Engineer podcast. Laban, you mentioned that earlier, and that's where a lot of my energy is going. I love the opportunity to engage with guests and also with listeners. We've got a community on Facebook that people can join, and all that information is centered around the hub of the podcast. So thehappyengineerpodcast.com or whatever platform you're using, YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, to listen to this show, just search The Happy Engineer and you'll find us. But yeah, I would love to connect with anybody, and I hope this has been encouraging for them. So if you want some more, jump over there and check us out.
Happy Engineer. He is happy. He's always upbeat. Do you have any concluding thoughts for our audience today, Zach?
The arc of this conversation stirs me to say one of the lessons that I learned through the last 4 or 5 years that has served me really well, and I wasn't expecting to go this direction, but I think it's prudent. I love to learn. I love it. If somebody would pay me everything that I get paid for all the work I do and in coaching and investing and otherwise just to sit around and learn stuff, I'd probably go that route because I love it. And so it's really easy for me to fall into passive action, meaning, studying, listening to great podcasts like this, reading books, constantly going through the process of soaking in more knowledge. And that can also be mirrored by watching a lot of the news, trying to understand, macroeconomics and all these things and make sense of the world around us, etc. What I've found in my life now, Laban, is I need to consume 10% as much and act 90% more. I already know enough. There's already, I've spent so much time learning. It's not going to be that the next book is the key catalyst necessarily. Believe me, I love reading, and I'm not poo-pooing on knowledge in any way. But I feel like for me, the key thing in life has been like, this is a season, and especially with what we just talked about, the context of the world around us at this time, This is not a season to sit back and just consume information. Like, you got to get in the game. Take what you know and just start acting. So for me, I've literally cut down my knowledge consumption time and energy significantly, and I'm focusing way more on getting into action, in the business, in my health, in my relationships, and in meditation and visualization and the mindset disciplines, all of the things that move the needle. That's where I'm spending time and energy. And it may swing back towards more learning in the future, but I feel like this is a time to shift into drive, not neutral. So yeah, be my encouragement to anyone out there listening. You know enough to take the next few steps, and you're going to figure out the steps after that by taking the next ones, not by sitting here dreaming it up. So get going.
Ladies and gentlemen, Zach White.
I got superpowers, superpowers. I got superpowers, superpowers. I got superpowers, superpowers. Working 7 days a week and 24 hours. Yup, I got the business saying this one should have something. Why don't you come and